I'm Bradford Pearson. I'm the author of The Eagles of Heart Mountain. The quickest way to describe the book that I wrote is to say that it is the true story of a group of Japanese American teenagers who were taken from their home up and down the West Coast and sent to a World War II era incarceration camp in Northwest Wyoming, where they became, somehow, against the odds, became the best high school football team in the history of the state of Wyoming. And this is a group of young men from Los Angeles, San Francisco, Seattle, all across the West, who were taken from their homes after President Franklin Delano Roosevelt signed Executive Order 9066, which allowed military leaders on the West Coast of the United States to remove Japanese Americans and Japanese immigrants from their homes following the attack on Pearl Harbor. And these young men were sent to Wyoming. None of them had ever been out of the state before, never mind to a state that, like Wyoming, which was 1,000 miles from their home. And when they arrived at Heart Mountain, which is the name of the camp, they had almost nothing. They could only carry the clothes. They could only bring with them the clothes that they could carry in one additional bag. Families all lived in one room in tar paper shacks. The barracks were constructed in about an hour each. And when the incarcerees first arrived there, the wood that they were made with was so green that the wind and snow would be able to whip right into their homes. But one thing that happened as soon as they arrived at this camp was some of the elders, some of the folks in their 50s and 60s, decided that what the young people in this camp needed more than anything was something to do. Otherwise, they would go crazy. So the first thing they did was they built a baseball field. And very soon after that, they built a football field. And this group of teenagers, only 3 of them had ever played high school football before. And they came together with 40 other teens from Heart Mountain out of the 10,000 or so folks who were sent to this camp. And these 3 boys plus 2 coaches taught the rest of these teenagers how to play football. And then, I don't want to give most of the book away, but I will say, like I said at the top, that this group of teenagers became the best football team in the history of the state of Wyoming. And in the book, I use the story of the Eagles football team to tell the broader story of Japanese American life in the United States and Japanese American incarceration in general. I think of this book sort of as a little bit of a Trojan horse, in that if I can convince somebody to read a book about football in World War II, I can actually include a lot more information about immigration, racism, labor leaders, and all these different topics that I'm kind of interested in. And so for me, this is a great opportunity, especially at this moment in American history, to sort of look back on a different chapter of American history and see what lessons we might be able to learn from these unfortunate racist events that led up to the incarceration of 120,000 Japanese Americans and their families in the early 1940s. And, for me, I grew up in Hyde Park, New York, which is the hometown of Franklin Delano Roosevelt. So for me, I had this sort of personal connection to the story of World War II era incarceration, because the town that I grew up in was also responsible for the man, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, who put this policy into action. So growing up, I had this real reverence for Roosevelt, because it's sort of in Hyde Park, it's all around you. The name of my high school was named after Roosevelt. The post office, the middle school, they were all designed with New Deal era funds. So for me, being able to sort of look at the history behind this era in Roosevelt's life and this real black mark on his record was for me a really good and interesting, as a journalist, it was an interesting way to sort of reset my own thoughts on who this man was. And, to be able to tell the story of the Eagles and their Japanese American families at a time in American history that has seen a rise in hate and violence against Asian Americans specifically was really the honor of a lifetime. And I'm incredibly thankful that these families welcomed me into their lives and welcomed me into their family histories to be able to tell this story.